Welcome back, Tigers! In this video, we're going to learn how to create a Google Calendar event with n8n when a record is created or updated in Salesforce. If you haven't heard of n8n, it is a product very similar to Zapier. It's used for automating workflows, but it is cheaper, open source, and has some really interesting features. Let's go check out how to automate Salesforce and n8n to create Google Calendar events. Here we are in Salesforce, and we're looking at a custom object called Google Calendar Events. Now, this object stores the date and time and status of different events that we have going on. We want to create an automation that automatically takes the data for this particular event and it posts it to a Google Group Calendar. We have a Google Calendar that non-Salesforce users view, and they need to be able to see any of the events that we have stored in this custom object on that Google Calendar. We have a manual process in place right now where somebody updates this custom object record and then they go and manually update the Google Calendar event. That is very time consuming for our teams. So we want to put an automation in place that whenever the status is set to scheduled and a new calendar event is created, we want to create a record in our Google Calendar. Then if the date or time changes in Salesforce, we want to update the date and time on our Google Calendar. And then if the status goes to canceled, we want to delete that event from the Google Calendar. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to set up an automation in n8n that is going to trigger whenever a record is created with a status of scheduled. We're also going to add into that automation that anytime a date time changes on this record, it will update the Google Calendar event. We're going to show you two different workflows that you can build in n8n. One that's going to be triggered off of a new record or a record modification, and another one that's going to be triggered off of a flow invoking an outbound message. Now, option number two is more favorable for me because you have a lot more control over when that particular flow is going to fire, and then the outbound message sends a message to n8n. Sounds a little bit more complicated, but in my opinion, it's really easier. Let's go ahead and jump into option number one, where we're going to create a workflow based on record changes. So we'll go over to n8n and we'll click Add Workflow. Our first step is to click the plus sign, click Action in an App, search for Salesforce, and then you'll scroll all the way down to Triggers, and we're going to select On Custom Object Created. You'll select your Salesforce credentials, and the pull times indicate how often n8n is going to check Salesforce for a brand new record. We're going to select our custom object name from the drop-down here, and then we'll click Fetch Test Event. This is just going to select any event. We want to actually force it to select a specific event. So we're going to go ahead and create a new record over here. And we'll make sure not to put a value in the Google Calendar Event ID field. We'll save this, and then we're going to take this ID and we're going to click Edit right here, and we're going to paste the ID into the URL and ID fields. We'll click Save, and then you'll see this purple bar, and what that means is the data has been pinned. So that means this is the record that we're going to test with for the remaining tests that we do within this workflow, which is really nice because it's really obnoxious when it randomly selects any record that's in your Salesforce database. We'll click back to Canvas, and then we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to make this fire whenever a custom object record is updated. Then we can rename these nodes. Our next step is to click the plus sign, Action in an App, search for Salesforce, and then we're going to get a custom object. So we're going to get the record that was just updated or created. We'll select our credentials, we'll select the custom object, and then the record ID is just going to pull right from here. We'll go back and then we'll connect both of these. Our next step is to add what's called a switch. This is underneath the flow and then switch. So this acts kind of like a path setting in Zapier. It allows you to route records based on certain values. Now we're going to make sure this switch is connected, or else you can't get the data from your previous node. We'll open this up, we'll execute the previous nodes, And then we'll be able to drag and drop the fields from this left-hand pane over into our routing rules. So this is saying that we want the status, if it's scheduled, to go down one path. And then if the status is canceled, we're going to make it go down a different path. In the switch, your settings need to be set to execute once, or else it's going to go down both paths. The next little thing about a switch is you can see that it says 0 and 1 here. We want to know which one's scheduled and which one's canceled. So we're going to go ahead and rename that output to show the names of the statuses. Okay, so we'll test this step, and then it should go down the scheduled path, which is perfect. Our next step is to add a create Google Calendar event. So we want to create this Google Calendar event whenever an event comes in here with a status of scheduled. We're going to go to the plus sign, action in an app, put in Google Calendar, and we're going to create an event. We want to wire this up. And then we're going to put in our Google Calendar credentials. Our resource is event. Our operation is create. We're going to select our calendar from here. And then we're just going to drag and drop our start and end times into the screen. Now we also want to map the name of our event. So we're going to add the summary field, and we'll drag and drop our name there. We also want to add our color code, because we have a fancy way that we're managing our colors. In the settings, we will always output data, and then we'll go ahead and test this. And then we would expect to see a Google Calendar event. So we see on 9/11, 12 to 1. Let's see, is that correct? That is correct. Okay, our next step is to update the Google Calendar event ID onto our record. So we'll populate this field right here. We're going to copy this, and we're going to edit it, and we're going to change it from a get to an update. And then we want to select the ID of the record to come in here that we want to update. We'll collapse this down, and then the ID of the record is what is going to output out of the switch. So we are going to select the ID from there. And then we're going to update the Google Calendar event ID on our Salesforce record with the ID of the Google Calendar event that was just created. In our settings, we will always output data, and we're going to update SF record. We can test this step, and then we expect to see the ID of the Google Calendar event get updated on our Salesforce record. And it did. Perfect. We'll come back to our workflow, and then I'm going to save this. Now, one thing that we've noticed happens whenever we were testing is a Google Calendar event is going to get created over and over again every time this workflow is triggered. So we want to put a little if-then statement in here so that it only fires if this Google event ID is missing. So we're going to delete this connector. We'll go to the plus sign. We'll go to flow, and we'll go to if. And we're going to wire this up. So we're going to look for Google Calendar event ID to exist. So we want the record from our switch, and we want to check this field right here. And we're going to check to see if it exists. Now we're going to come back, and we're going to make this find our record again, because our record has been updated since it last came into this workflow. So we'll come in here and we'll check to make sure that it got the record with the Google Calendar event ID populated, and it did. So now if we come here it should see the record with the ID in there, and then it's going to come down this path. So we'll always output the data here. We'll test this step, and then it should come down the true branch in this node, which it did. So the Google Calendar event ID exists. If it doesn't exist, then I want it to create a new one. So I'll make the false branch go down there. If it does exist, I want it to update the Google Calendar event. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to change the create to an update. And then I want all of these values from this if. So I'm going to use this ID. That is the ID of my Google Calendar event. And then I'm going to update my date and my time. I will always output data, and this will be update event. We'll save that. So now let's go ahead and test this workflow. Let's test changing the date and time. So I'm going to change this to be from 1 to 5. And I'm going to change the day as well to be the 12th. We'll save that. And then we'll come back here and we'll get the new record. And we'll just make sure that it populates in here and then it has the right date and time, which it does. Okay, so now we can click test workflow. And we can see that it went down the correct path. And let's make sure that it updated our Google Calendar event to be on the 12th from 1 to 5. And it did. Perfect. So that side of the workflow is working perfectly. Now let's work on the canceled path. So I'm going to check for the Google Calendar event ID to exist on the Salesforce record in this path as well, because I don't want it to do anything if that doesn't exist in Salesforce for some reason. And then I'm going to update this to be canceled so that it fits the criteria and so that I can map all the fields in my notes. So I'll click the play button here. It should bring that record in. So we'll just come over here and we'll check to make sure it shows canceled as the status, which it does. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to execute the previous nodes. And then I'm just going to make sure that it's pulling the right record in here. So I want it to check for Google Calendar event ID exists, and that looks perfect. And so if it does, and if it's canceled, then I want to delete my event. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. So if this is true, we're going to change this to delete. We will execute the previous nodes, and we are going to drop our Google Calendar event ID field in there. And always output data, that's perfect. And then the last step we want to do is we want to remove this value from this field in Salesforce. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to execute the previous nodes. And I'm going to just make sure that I get the right records here. So I'm going to update the record that came into that decision element. And then I actually want to set it to null. So you can just leave it empty here. So unlike Zapier, where you can't set a field to null, in n8n, you can. So we'll test this step. And it says it was successful. So we should see the value of this ID be removed, which we do, perfect. And we no longer see the event on our calendar. So all of that is working perfectly. So that is the first option for your workflow. Now, one thing about this option is it's going to execute every time one of our custom object records is created or modified. Keep in mind that n8n's pricing is based on workflow executions. So every time a record is triggered to run, that counts as a workflow execution. So we don't want this workflow to fire every single time. Sometimes this use case might work for you, sometimes it might not. In our scenario here, we definitely want to better control when these records are going to trigger this workflow so we can control our costs. So option number 2, we're going to create a flow that has all the criteria that we want to trigger on that's going to create an outbound message that's going to invoke this workflow. Let's go ahead and copy this. And this is going to be our outbound message. So our trigger is not going to be an event is created or updated. It's going to be when a webhook is called. So we'll select Webhook, and then we can see that we get a screen that has test URL, a production URL, it has a get, it has a path. This is the endpoint that we need to put into our outbound message. Let me show you what that looks like. We'll come over to Salesforce, we'll go into Setup, we'll go to Outbound Messages, and then we're going to create a new outbound message. You'll select your object. We'll call this n8n, Google Calendar Event Automation. And then this endpoint is this right here. So we're going to copy that and we're going to put it into the endpoint URL. And then you'll select which fields you want to push over to n8n. It doesn't matter if you push fields that you're not going to use, it's fine, but you want to make sure you're going to push over all the fields you do need. All right, so we'll click Save there. Then our outbound message is all set up. Now we need to create our flow. We're going to create a new record triggered flow. This is on the Google Calendar event object whenever it's created or updated. We're going to use a decision element and not use the entry criteria just in case we want to put other actions on this flow in the future. And so we're going to check for the record is new, status is changed, date is changed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in this criteria really fast using custom logic so that you can see all the criteria that we're going to be looking for. Okay, we're looking for the record to be created and has a status of scheduled, or the status is changed and the status is canceled or scheduled, or the start time changes or the end date changes. That's all our criteria. And then our next step is just to add the outbound message here. We'll go to Action. We'll scroll down to Outbound Messages, and then it's this one right here. We're going to send the outbound message. And that's it. That's going to allow us to completely control when a record goes to n8n. Okay, now before we test this, we need to change some things in our webhook. So we need our HTTP method to be a post. And then our respond is going to be use respond to webhook node. This is something that I found in the n8n community. Whenever you're using an outbound message in Salesforce, it keeps trying to fire it, and we need to use another element that is going to prevent it from firing over and over again. So I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. And then in our settings, you're not going to make any changes. Now to test this, we'll click Listen for Test Event, and then we're just going to clone our event here. Make sure it has the right criteria to trigger your flow. So this one is scheduled and it's a brand new record. That should trigger it. And so this is saying that I'm getting an error because I need to add this node that I was just telling you about to my canvas. So let me go ahead and do that. So we'll do a respond to webhook. And then I will give you this information in the response body that I'm putting right here. So you'll select respond with text, and then you'll just put that response body in. So you'll find that in the description below. In the options, you're going to add a response header. You're going to add in the name, you're going to put just content-type. In the value, you're going to put application/XML. I'm going to go back to the canvas, and let's come back here and let's listen for our test event. Clone this one more time. And then we can see that our outbound message fired and it now has a record in n8n. We're going to go back to the canvas and then we're going to connect this to our workflow. So our workflow for the other scenario isn't any different. The only difference is what is triggering it. So all we need to do is go into all these nodes and make sure that all the fields are pointing to the fields from the webhook instead of the old fields that were from the record create and record update. Okay, our first step is we'll remove this node. We do not need that. It's going to go straight to the switch. And then we're going to come into our switch and it's going to bring in the data. Collapse down the headers and our fields are actually down here in this section. Now we can see that we're missing our Google event ID. So I'm going to go ahead and update this to have a value of test. And I want to make this listen for a new event so it can get that new field in. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to listen for test event, and I'm going to change the date and time field. Okay, and it found the record, so we'll come back here. And now if we go into the switch, we should see our data came in here, which it did. Perfect. All right, so now we have all the fields that we're going to need throughout the workflow. So I'm going to drag and drop this status here. Same with this one. You can test that step, and it should go down the scheduled path, which it does. Now this is going to come down our path where the Google Calendar event ID does exist. So we'll scroll down here and I'm going to add a condition that says the Google Calendar event ID doesn't show test. So I'm going to say it does exist and it's not equal to test. Okay, so we'll test that step. So it should go down the false path, which it does. And then we'll come to update the event. So we shouldn't see anything here because it's going down the false one, which is correct. So we'll come to the create event and we'll drag and drop our fields here. Our fields are right down here. And then we need to map our color code in our name. Okay, then we'll test this. Perfect. And then we will come to our custom object update. So we're going to pull the data from the switch here because this ID is going to be the same that came into the record. Actually, it's not that ID. It is this ID right here, SFID. All these fields that begin with SF are the ones that you want to look for. Okay, so let's test this step. All right, perfect. So then our record was updated with the Google Calendar event ID. So let's just refresh this. And then we do see it there. All right, that's great. So we've got our scheduled path all updated. Okay, now let's do our canceled path. So we're going to come to our test record and we're going to update it to have a status of canceled. But let's make our webhook listen first. I'm going to click save here. Okay, you got to be a little bit patient here. Sometimes it takes 1 second, sometimes it takes 5 seconds. I do want to let you know if you're running into any issues here with the outbound messages firing or not firing, you can monitor them in setup underneath outbound messages monitoring. And if you see that it's not firing, go ahead and delete all of the current outbound messages that you have in there that are trying to send out and clear this out. And then you shouldn't have any problems anymore. All right, so we're going to come back down here, make sure that we have the right record. So this is showing a status of canceled or scheduled. So this is not showing the record that we're expecting to see. I'm going to change this back to scheduled again. I'm going to refresh this. Listen for test event, and then we'll change it to canceled. So we'll scroll down here and our record now shows canceled. So we are all set to do our canceled path We'll click play on our switch and it goes down to our canceled arm, and then we're going to edit this. We will clear out this event ID and we will come down here and drag and drop this one in. We will test this step. And then it said it successfully deleted the event. So we'll come in here and we're going to map the Google Calendar event ID. So that is in our Google Calendar event ID field on our custom object record. So we'll test this step. All right, it says it was deleted. And then we're going to make sure that this is the appropriate field here, which it's not. So we need to go ahead and map the ID for this record. Remember, it's the SF ID. And then we want to set that back to null. And then we'll play this. All right, so let's save this. And now let's test it from the top. So we're going to test the workflow right from down here. It's waiting for a trigger event. Let's clone a record. We're going to give it a completely different name. So this executed the workflow, and we can see that we have a problem in here. So it looks like it went down both paths. So our problem is in our ifs. I forgot to set this to execute only once and undo the radial button for always output data. So we need to do that only on this one. We don't need to do it on this one because it doesn't have two outpaths. This way it'll only go down one of the paths. So let's save this. And now let's do another test. So I'll clone this record. I'll make the date the 17th. And then I'm going to click test workflow, and then I'm going to save this record. And then this executed, and we can see that it went down the correct path to create our Google Calendar event, which is perfect, 17th from 12 to 5. And then let's refresh this and we should see a value in our Google Calendar event ID, and we do. That's perfect. All right, so our next step is to test the date time change. Let's get this ready. Let's change it to the 18th. And let's test this workflow, and we should see it go down this update event path up here. We'll save this. Okay, and then we have an error here. So let's go ahead and see what's going on here. So it looks like it doesn't like the Google event ID that we have. Let's switch that out. Then let's test that step. Okay, that is now working. It did switch our event over to the 18th. Okay, let's save that. All right, let's test the canceled path. So we're going to change the status to canceled. We'll click test workflow, and then we'll click save. That should trigger the outbound message, and then that went right down the path perfectly. Our event was deleted from our Google Calendar, and then we should see the Google Calendar event ID get removed as well. And it is gone. That is perfect. And one of the best things about testing in n8n is you've used 0 workflow executions. You can test the whole process for real without using any of your paid workflows, which is really nice. That's it. That's a wrap. Be sure to subscribe to Blue Tiger Academy so you don't miss out on the next video we are working on, where we compare Zapier and n8n. We will see who is the clear winner when it comes to connecting Salesforce to other applications by reviewing cost, ease of use, and limitations of each product. Let us know in the comments below if you have any specific projects and you're looking to connect applications to Salesforce using an automation tool like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.